good, folks? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to review Korn's 2013 album, The Paradigm Shift. Now, this basically was after their late 2011 album, The Path of Totality, which I think that was kind of a different variable for Korn. But then for this project to be called The Paradigm Shift, which basically means like a differential kind of mindset as far as looking at things. I kind of looked after it. I wonder what that was about. But fun fact about Acid Roots Music Channel, this was an album that I originally intended to review way back in 2015 because I was listening to this throughout like the spring and summer of 2015 when Korn had somewhat recently dropped this project. I think the first one I reviewed was Follow the Leader, but I had been listening to this, but it was just a lot of not so much a chore, but just like a difficulty trying to obtain the personality to kind of be able to listen to it. But I did at least give it the attempt. And so I looked online, and it basically said about this project that Korn wanted to do like the dark elements with the Issues album, and then have like the heaviness of Untouchables, which makes sense because this is kind of a dark album, but it's just very like not. It doesn't have like the distortion and the kind of haze and overcast kind of hollowness that Issues kind of had. I mean, I feel like Issues from 1999 by Korn was the perfect kind of hazy and just overall creepy autumn kind of album, just because to me, despite the fact that was a metal album, it was perfect in the new metal fold and showcased a lot of like escaping creepy album, what that could do in that right sense. And there really hasn't been too many albums like it since. I mean, minus like maybe Marilyn Manson, Orgy, and Power Man 5000, and sometimes Rob Zombie. There's not a ton of folks who have the ability to capture that creep factor that Korn had in 1999. But I guess I kind of realized that Untouchables from 2002 was kind of more riff heavy and didn't have that kind of vibe, because this is a riff heavy record. This is more headbanging Korn, mosh pit Korn that I wasn't really expecting from them. And I kind of forgot that they can sometimes be a metal band that is not just new metal in a sense of like a distorted kind of creepiness, but they also deliver things that have like the headbanging moments and the more metal and kind of reverb and that type of stuff as far as going to a concert and that typical things of a rock band. So it's just kind of forgotten about. I mean, I've listened to a number of Korn albums, but I'm typically used to like their stuff. I normally, for the most part, listen to Issues and Follow the Leader. Those are the two ones I know the best. And then sometimes I listen to Life is Peachy. But those three records all kind of had a more hazy and less riff heavy kind of atmosphere about them. But it's just it's interesting that Korn pulled this vibe out, because it seemed like they also tried to do something different with Path of Totality. But that's just kind of the concept. So yeah, the singles, this album, despite the fact that there were several songs on this project I liked, I ultimately have to say that like Issues is still head and shoulders to me better than like the stuff that is on this release. So the singles are better, and the production is better. Like that sort of stuff is just far better. I will give John Davis credit though for the fact that the hooks, that he's proven time and again that he is a pretty good hook master, and he's definitely able to kind of have like a lot of these hooks that are just delivered fully, that are earworms, they're hooky, they're melodic, and they have like an easy sense of any one of these could almost be played on the radio and are just overcast and a lot of haunting things about them. But it still is just a different project, and it just kind of has where they're trying to combine Issues with Untouchables, and the thing about it is it just doesn't quite translate as well as like some of Korn's best. I mean, it's so mellow and so off to the side and so like passive aggressive in a lot of ways. I just wasn't expecting how that kind of went. That's kind of the thing. But for example, we'll start with the singles now. So Never Never, this is a real spacey kind of single. It does sound like it's something you could hear in like September, October, kind of in a haunting sense, but I kind of feel like it just feels like a pop rock song. It really feels like if Korn was ever to try going for like pop radio, kind of like how certain bands did, like with Three Doors Down with Kryptonite or something like that, I kind of felt like this is their gambit that could have done it. But I don't know, it's just very sleepy, very drowsy, kind of woozy almost, and the hook is good on there. I felt like he nailed the way he kind of put that hook together, like I was talking about. But it just is such a very off to the wayside Korn. This is probably not the first song I would recommend to someone who's listening to Korn or someone who hasn't listened to Korn in a while. It just is very, it's like I said, it's just drowsy. So that's kind of the concept. It seemed strange for that to be a lead single. It just kind of showcased the effort and the energy that they were putting into the project. But Spike in My Veins kind of ups the tempo a little bit. This one's a little bit more metal induced and kind of this one's a little bit more metal induced and kind of has like uh, just a bigger pace towards it and a little bit more, not so much mid tempo, but kind of up tempo. It's kind of high mid tempo, low up tempo in a way. I just kind of feel like it had the energy towards it, but the riff was still not as beautiful as some of the stuff that they could do. I mean, there's really, I know I probably should listen to Korn's 1994 album and Life is Peachy more, but the stuff that I compare it to, I still feel like Freak on a Leash was just a more haunting song, and then Got the Life is a more haunting song, and the stuff from Issues like Falling Away from Me is more haunting. But I think they were really aiming more in a sense of trying to have that creepy overcastness just with the riffs from Untouchables, which kind of creates, if the riffs aren't interesting, it really means that they failed at what they were attempting to do. And I don't want to full blown say that they failed, but I really think that the maybe Korn had almost forgotten how the riffs could be kind of more catchy, but it some of these riffs on here are not that interesting. It's just kind of the concept. I feel like when they go with their more ghoulish kind of feel, it just works better, but they need to kind of, it just felt like some of these riffs, and I'll talk about that. But the only other single, there was a deluxe edition that had a single on there, or not a deluxe, but like a world tour edition that had Hater on there. I'm actually reviewing the deluxe edition right now. So it was just 11 songs. Then they put out a deluxe with 2 additional songs. Then they put out a world tour edition. And then I want to say there might have been something else, but I'm just going to review the deluxe. Maybe down the road I'll review the world tour edition with Hater on there. But so there was a song that got leaked before the album came out, and it might have been a promotional single. Wikipedia saying this song is a promotional single, but it's Love and Meth. And basically, I like the drums. You can kind of hear the drums more in the verses and how the first 2 verses kind of start out. And I do like the concept behind that. It's an easy kind of backyard drinking with your pals kind of song. It's typical type stuff that goes on, but then it kind of in the second verse kind of has like this kind of creepiness that I was looking for, just with like something else, like some sort of distorted horn in there and that type of stuff. I thought that that was pretty dope in the second verse. But yeah, I mean, John Davis, this is another hook. Love and Meth is definitely a good hook. And I forgot to mention that Spike in My Veins. These are really put together hooks in ways that, I mean, even if you don't like the riffs on these songs, the hooks do deliver it to where if you're just looking for a catchy chorus and something to sing along to, all 3 of the singles kind of deliver in that sense. That's a redeeming factor, but I really felt like in terms of like just being sonically pleasing, this is probably one of the first times I've had to say that Korn just didn't have that touch this time, which is really kind of somewhat disappointing. But I think that they were just aiming for a different assortment, trying to make an amalgamation of albums that really kind of was a tricky path to pull. But I know that they can do better riffs. It's just the concept. It just somehow came off as kind of awkward. And basically, despite the fact that I liked 8 out of 11 songs on this project, or 9 out of 13 on the deluxe edition, I still feel like this is not the go-to Korn album for me. And I just kind of think, as far as that's kind of concerned, I really feel like Issues just completely knocked the Korn template out of the park, and I need to revisit Follow the Leader. I feel like those 2 albums are just some of Korn's best. Basically, Korn's first 4 albums are the ones that are most to go for, but I still feel like I don't like writing them off, because I remember giving Serenity of Suffering a high score in 2016, so they kind of got a revamp 3 years later. That's the album they did after this, and I reviewed that, but I feel like Serenity Suffering was better than this project. I think I can safely confirm that, but it's really kind of awkward just in the sense as to why these riffs on here just felt so uninspired. That's kind of the thing about it. Like Pray For Me, What We Do, Victimized and Paranoid and Aroused all have a very similar riff, just the same kind of tempo, just a real kind of mild and not really so much excited kind of riff as far as just making metal and stuff. And it's like, I feel like some of these are just so C grade, B minus grade, and that type of stuff. While it is good to have metal, I feel like the thing about a riff is it makes you want to headbang and kind of have more energy. Now, I feel like Victimize at least did it the best. That's probably the one with the best riff, but just having four songs with a similar riff that just doesn't have too much energy in terms of what it's trying to attempt just kind of makes some of this project a little bit tepid more than it needed to be. I mean, especially when Korn are pretty much masters of being able to put out like creepy and ghoulish music. It just feels like, it seemed like an opportunity to kind of do this, get the creepiness in there, get like the distorted things that they did like in Love and Meth, and there's another song where they did that, like the song Tell Me What You Want had a lot of creepy kind of horns in there too, but it just kind of feels like somehow the amalgamation and the mixture, the concoction of what they were trying to do just didn't get pulled off well enough. So, but I'm going to go ahead and list the songs. I'm going to go ahead and list the songs out of 11 that are or out of 13 that I recommend. So despite the fact of how I'm complaining about this, there were actually 8 songs out of 11, 9 songs out of 13 on the deluxe that I recommend. So here they are: Never Never, Spike in My Veins, Love and Meth, Mass Hysteria, Lullaby for a Sadist, It's All Wrong, Pray for Me, Victimize, and Tell Me What You Want. Now, I forgot to talk about Lullaby for a Sadist. This is probably one of the creepier songs I've heard Korn do in a long time. I just love the song title, and I like the concept of how easily that they just kind of made that such a mellow and just kind of perfect kind of autumn song. It just has that hazy kind of ghastliness that I wasn't expecting. It's definitely one of the creepier Korn songs I've heard in a while, just the way that that kind of turned out. But I just kind of feel like, in terms of that context, I mean, Korn succeeds on cylinders as far as making like the arrangements for how it is. I mean, if you're looking just for a plain simple metal album to jam out to, it does succeed on that. But I've just heard better Korn. That's the thing. For a standard metal artist, if this was like their first album, second album, they didn't have that many hits, I'd say, yeah, this is a pretty good to go green light kind of album. But it just is kind of the fact that for Korn, who has a couple of classics under their belt and some of the most haunting songs for the most part in rock music, especially with that aesthetic, it is kind of, it's like, well, this is good, but it still pales compared to some of the stuff they've done in the past. Like, I feel like Issues easily succeeds past this. So does Follow the Leader. Follow the Leader has better singles. I feel like Life is Peachy has better attempts and just better overall style and swag on there. And I think that like the first Korn album had better originality and just execution. So it's just kind of some of those moments. I haven't really listened to. I've actually tried listening to Take a Look in the Mirror. That one kind of seemed riff heavy, kind of similar to Untouchables. But I want to say that another album that's similar to Issues is See You on the Other Side, which I haven't listened to in a long time, probably since like 2015, 2016. But I remember liking that album quite a bit. I'm just going to assume that it's kind of similar to Issues, which is the style of Korn that I like to see. But I just, I would have to kind of say that I really like these songs, but I feel like some of these are so much humdrum. I mean, these are good songs, but I feel like some of these songs are so much humdrum that I don't know how often I would listen to these, even if I bought this album, just because I feel like Issues is so much better, Follow the Leader so much better. Those are just better Korn songs. And typically, this is kind of weird for me to say this, just because typically when I find music, even if I don't wholesomely like it, I still am willing to listen to it. And this is just kind of odd because I do like the songs, but it really doesn't spark my like desire as far as being addicted to this album. I don't feel any sort of passion for wanting to kind of say that I wholesomely want to check these songs out more than a few times. It just doesn't have that bite. I mean, they're good songs. I admit that they're good, but it really, Korn has so many projects that it just pales compared to some of the stuff that they should be doing. It just does not have that addictive factor. So that's kind of something else to throw in. But it is going to get a decent score. But it just feels kind of weird scoring it if you hear me getting ready to give it like an 8 out of 10. But then I just am not in love with this project and don't really feel like it's addictive. So Yeah, me liking 8 out of 11 or 9 out of 13. I'm just going to give this album, I don't want to give it any higher than an 8 or an 8.5. So I'm just going to give this record a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe even a 7. I'm going to give it a 7.25 out of 10 just because, I mean, there's a lot of songs I like on here, but the addictiveness and just the quality of these songs compared to some of the stuff they've done and just how, I mean, they're just a little bit too mellow, a little bit too drowsy, and a little bit too kind of meager for me to want to go back to these and kind of support this project and spend the $13 to get it brand new or something like that. This kind of feels like the $13-16 to get it new. I kind of feel like I do think this is decent, but it's probably not my go-to Korn album. I just would have to say so. 7.25. The social score, I would probably give like a 6 out of 10 just because it did. I mean, it was pretty quiet. The standard edition only had 2 singles, but they belted out some other singles like Hater on the World Tour edition, and then the secret kind of promotional single of Love and Meth. But really, these songs, I mean, they're just not. They're hazy, and that's fine that they're hazy. But I think they're a little bit too lost in the cloud of like their enigma because they don't have much bite. It just feels like it's really kind of somehow the venom is just not there this time. That's really kind of the concept. So 7.25 out of 10, 6 social. And I feel like, can this record be topped? I mean, yes, it can. It has been topped. I feel like any of any of Korn's first 4 albums can top this. And I also kind of feel like Serenity is Suffering and probably The Nothing from 2019 are better in recent years, and definitely like See You on the Other Side. But in terms of the future, Korn dropped Requiem back in February of 2022, so that's something else that they have. I'm hoping that that one's a good one too. I haven't listened to it, but I'm going to get back into the spirit of reviewing more Korn. But this one's, I don't want to say it's meh, but it's just kind of mediocre in terms of impact.